Blackbird, hello. Alan, good evening. Ginge. Denise Graham. Hey, how are you? It's unusually bright in here, I notice. Might want to turn it down here later on. Alan, what's on the agenda for tonight? The agenda actually is a free-for-all. I've been wondering how people are doing and feeling, and just wanted to check in mostly with you guys. And just if you have something to add, something to say, something that's on your mind, that's tonight's forum. Denise, hey there. Morgan, Warlock, Roth, how are you? Jen is here. Hey, there is a name I recognize, always like it. It's pretty much what I can make out without my glasses. John, how are things? Beth, hello. Well, let's see if anybody's going to join us up here on the board. If you want to share something, whatever it may be, just raise your hand. I'll put you up here on the board. Big Oil is getting sued in California. Ooh, what's that all about? Nice group. Yeah, thanks. I'm working on that. Trying to be more, socially palatable. Uh-oh, there he is. We got to stop talking bad about him now because next dad is here now. More groovy. Isn't that what we always are? Groovy. Gen X.
Keep that groove going.
Keep the groove going? You're a jazz musician. Of course I'll keep that groove going.
Loving it.
Wait a minute. Ginge, did you just duplicate from Ginge to Dark Ginge? Should we talk about that? What's on your mind, my friend? That was you, Gen X. Don't make me angry like that.
No, that's good music. That I don't know if I'd put that more in the jazz category or the teenager watching scrambled television category, but it's close.
It is actually, believe it or not, it is the free YouTube library. So that when I upload the live to YouTube, I don't get dinged with whatever copyright they have in mind.
Okay.
Yeah, there is some utility to YouTube, actually, believe it or not. Yeah.
Just getting situated here. Give me a minute.
Oh yeah, take your time. If anybody wants to join us up here and has something to say to the status quo as far as how you're feeling and what's on your mind, essentially, if you watched my lead-in video, essentially the all-out invitation to everybody, I'm just wondering how everybody is doing, because I've noticed a little bit of a tonality change, and maybe it's just me just over-interpreting things, but it seems to me that the moods on TikTok on the left and progressive side is a little subdued of late, particularly in the last week. And this is where this live is coming in, where I thought, well, I'll just check in with you guys and see how you're feeling. And if you have something to share and you can come on up, I'm more than happy to put you in a box on TikTok, not reality. Did you like the switch to the mute music?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, bringing it down. Blackbird, what is new with you?
I got to tell you, I look forward to these Friday lives. I'm getting a little burnt out, and we keep talking about the tonality. You talk about the tonality of the mood and the shift, and we keep talking about messaging and communication, and I'm about at the end of my tolerance rope, and I'm watching lives where even people on the left cannot seem to get along anymore and just are so quick to misinterpret um, words and phrases because everybody is I give everybody a pass and say, I get it, everybody is on edge and I feel it too, but we're so quick to not listen to what the message is from another person that we immediately start attacking each other. And I'm seeing that more and more and more and more on lives lately, that it's just it's getting cringe trying to stay on message and trying to give everybody a benefit of the doubt, you know. So that's what's on my mind.
What I've noticed is, and this is one of the reasons why I don't participate in many lives outside of the one that we are putting on Friday evening, is that a lot of those lives have become combative in the sense that those who are putting it on and participate understand that in a very typical, almost traditional media fashion, if it bleeds, it leads. It gets them gifts, gives them the eyeballs. And I've noticed this more and more of late, that even those who are on the left and progressive are tapping into this because it guarantees followers. And with the creative beta program, where you can make money essentially through followers and view counts, I think therein lies now the exchange value that, well, wait a minute, if I can essentially engage in this sort of controversy, I'm making money on the back end. Needless to say, I have a massive issue with that, which is why I'm not participating. But this is unfortunately the lay of the land on TikTok of late.
Yeah. And don't get me
I've
wrong.
seen
I mean,
very
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, I've seen very few authentic and collaborative conversations to the degree that even if we disagree, we can have a just an educational discourse, if you will, that is based on the idea that we're still trying to connect in one way or another. It's not about how much can I browbeat you.
Hmm.
And that is sort of the sense that I've been getting on the lives. And then when I look at my comment sections, it seems that on various videos, the mood is a little bit subdued and people are just sort of in this functional depression kind of chapter.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's and at the end of the day, it's grating on all of us. And I wish people could understand that number one, um, when we're on mediums like this, hey Travis, how you doing? When we're on mediums like this, where there's a lot to there's a lot that gets left to interpretation. Um, People will, I feel like it's almost intentional, but it's largely not. But people read into things that other people say, and they'll read into them quite often incorrectly, um, but it's very reflective of the message that they're trying to send, that they're trying to say. So I mean, I could take what you have to say, and you're freaking brilliant in your delivery, but based on my lens, I could take it totally out of context instead of stopping to reflect before I immediately offer a rebuttal to it. And the worst is that, if we were to invite a Republican up to the panel, it turns it into immediate, there's three of us here on the panel right now. Well, we'll become three velociraptors as soon as that one Republican gets up and not even give that person an opportunity, before the claws come out to have an actual intellectual, deep meaning conversation. I want to see conversation. I want to give people an opportunity to express their views. That should be the objective, but you're correct. It's like, the worse we treat a person, the more likes we're going to get, the more shares we're going to get. We're turning TikTok into clickbait, and that shouldn't be the objective.
Travis, I've had you on my radar for quite a while, sir. Thank you for coming back and for coming up. And oh, yeah. Um, and for coming into the box. How are things going? You're in one of the states that are, I would just call it mildly challenging. How are things coming along?
Am in the process of trying to get signatures to get on the ballot. I need 500 in each district, and we have 9 districts for a total of 4,500 minimum. One of our districts is a new district from the gerrymandering altercations, and that's a hard one. I don't. The website I use to mobilize with the Democratic Party to go to events and to meet other candidates, that district has nothing coming out of it, so I'm kind of nervous that there's no Democratic presence there, which makes it extremely challenging to get my signatures.
The question that I always wanted to ask candidates who are coming from the outside, and particularly in states that are either ridiculously gerrymandered or known to be deeply red, what is the probability of success? I mean, in a sense that you're overextending yourself, you're putting out, and just trying to get the signatures and really trying to mobilize. But history has shown that, particularly in Indiana, for instance, it's unbelievably challenging and difficult. Is this a first attempt where you think, okay, it's time to kick the pebble down the road and hopefully it turns into an avalanche? Or do you truly believe that, yeah, this can actually function and it can work?
So I was the very first one in my state to register before the current sitting senator announced he was going to step down and run for governorship. I have been ignored by all of the media as well as the Democratic Party as a whole for the most part, which is actually very disheartening in my party. And they are deciding to start to back who I would consider to be corporatist out of Indianapolis. So that's where the challenge comes. Like you said, if you're in the outside and you're not in the circle, they're kind of going to just brush you aside. But I've had to fight my entire life for everything that I've got and to get to where I am, and I'm not afraid of a fight. And if I can't get on the ballot by February 4th, which is the cutoff, then I will file for a write-in, and I'm still going to keep pushing because uh, I get a lot of bipartisan support when I speak because, like Neurodivergent Dad here said, a lot of the times when people come in these panels, it's just a free-for-all. It's like a pool of piranha, and then no one ever gets to talk or converse. But I actually work to allow them to speak. And when you do allow them to speak and engage in conversations, they start to you start to build support. So if I can become a write-in, if I don't get on the ballot, I do see pretty good probability still of me getting the primary as long as I can get to the spaces so people know who I am.
Solid. Dr. Sandstrom, good evening.
Hello.
Can you, while we have you here, can you just give us sort of the Cliff Notes 10,000-foot overview as to what your platform is, what you're running on, just as that the 43 people in the audience actually get a bit of a feel and hopefully can spread your message? Yeah, can you just give us a 10,000-foot overview, sort of the Cliff Notes version, if you will, of your platform, what you stand for, what you're running on, so that the 40, 50 people now in the audience can hopefully spread your message and maybe affect positive change in Indiana?
So I am very, very pro-worker. I am pro-union. I believe in fighting for better protections as well as sick day, maternity leave, paternity leave, and pretty much all of the protections that a lot of these developed European nations have that we could easily have, but our legislators choose not to give it to us. I also plan to fight for, in the case of LGBTQIA rights and women's rights, everyone's trying to address it as a law, but given the state of our SCOTUS, that's just going to get challenged and turned out immediately. So I plan on presenting and driving for it, not just as a law, but also as an amendment, because the only way around SCOTUS is to make it constitutional. So they, by definition, cannot say it's unconstitutional. I have an entire police reform plan, which involves removing qualified immunity, making a federal standard of police training, banning department transfers over misconduct, I plan on fighting to give our nurses better protections, including capping a patient to nurse ratio at roughly 5 from the medical professionals that I've talked to. That's a reasonable range. I have a wide range of things that I've heard people across the aisles want for decades, but have never gotten because our legislators don't want to give it to us. So my proposal is to get them the hell out and get us in.
If I may, uh, Travis, you stand absolutely no shot. You are too well spoken and you have way too good of ideas. So, sorry, but man, that was great.
I get that a lot, and right now, that probably at this current moment, that probably is true. But there's still, what are we going into October, November, December? There's still 5 months, and my work's having a lot of time off, so I'm about to get a lot of traveling.
Well, that's awesome. Something that bothers me is it seems lately, like we were talking about when you got here, and we're seeing more of this in the political spectrum with candidates as well, is, the well-spoken ones, the ones who appear knowledgeable and educated on their topics and their subjects, they seem to get largely ignored. It's the ones that come out screaming and yelling and ranting, conspiracy theories and all the other stupid things you can imagine. It's like that's almost what the public is clamoring for, and I just don't get it. I don't understand it.
I can explain that.
Please do.
Well, the public school system has been set up from the start in this country for failure because of being funded by whatever tax base they're in. And they're not, people aren't learning what they need to learn about civics and how to think critically. So the thing that gets the attention is what appeals to their fear and their anger, and and they're listening to clickbait, sound bites. That's all they can understand because they've never been taught to critically think. So I don't know what we're going to do about the American public to help us rise to the level that's required to think in a way to understand people like Travis here and understand what he's going to do for them.
Other part that I am running on, and this was designed as a way to address firearm violence on not just the mass level, but the communal level specifically. And that is by giving communities back their power and building these children up again. And it starts with reinvesting in our public education, opening up a lot of these schools that had just closed down. South Bend, which is about 20 minutes from me, just lost another one of their high schools. Elkhart, where I am, had lost one of their high schools. And what it does is it forces the students to combine them, and that overcrowds the teachers. So we need to reopen those and get more teachers out with better pay and make it so they're not spending stuff out of their pocket for their classroom supplies, and actually lower the burden on the teachers to give more attention to individual students, on top of restarting a lot of these after school programs, which is when those got removed, that's actually a major way that a lot of these street organizations were recruiting children. So with those programs, not just giving them an alternative to the streets, but it would be teaching them things like how to start and run small businesses, how to run for their local offices, how the government works, and teach them how to take the power back in their community, build up the next generation, and drive out that violence.
And I also think that we have to, in order to support children, which kind of ties back to other conversations that we've had on here, um, we have to support mothers and families. We have to support maternity leave and paternity leave. We have to support after school programs for kids. And we have to also begin addressing the healthcare situation that has medicalized birth in this country since, time in memoriam, even, dating back to before this country. So we have to start supporting mothers and fathers and their babies so that that early childhood development that begins even during pregnancy is supported by the community. And people aren't having to live in poverty and work multiple jobs to try to survive and stressing themselves out. When mothers are stressed in pregnancy, cortisol levels go up, and we get babies that come out as stressed little infants, and they grow up as stressed individuals, and they're more likely to respond to the world with fear and anger.
Right.
Travis, I am scanning the comment section. Do you have a position or perhaps response to some of the education questions that are coming up, such as how are we going to get teachers back? What do we need to do as far as education is concerned? I'm not exactly sure where Indiana stands as far as the educational map is concerned and the quality of education, but what are your thoughts on that?
So right now, Indiana is between 45th and 47th in education, so we are near dead last. We had just voted in our state legislature to arm the teachers. So those two combinations are going to be tough to get teachers back, and I'm not going to deny that. But it starts with, like I said, one, raising their pay and making sure they don't pay for things out of pocket, because no one wants to pay for their work supplies. Like, that's something that should be covered by your employer. Second would be finding a way to ban arming teachers in schools, because that's the major issue Indiana is facing. Since they voted that once it goes into effect and signed by the governor, teachers here are going to leave in waves, because teachers do not want that responsibility. They don't get paid enough to have it. They aren't trained well enough to have it. And just no one wants to be the one that has to eventually do that task if the situation arises. So if we can ban arming the teachers and maybe work on getting some type of security that doesn't intimidate the children, that could possibly be another alternative. But it starts with getting them pay, getting them benefits, and making sure that they aren't paying for things out of pocket and they aren't overwhelmed.
No kidding. Travis, are they
Clarification on
requiring them
that.
to be armed?
That's what I was going to ask.
I just wanted to ask, is it a requirement that they be armed, or is it an optional thing? Just
It is
more of an
optional. It is optional, but they are going to quit on principle because they don't want
of course.
any more weapons in the schools, and it's a very 2A state, so it's likely that the teachers that choose to do it will be enough to scare the ones that don't.
Got it. Okay.
That's ridiculous. It's more of, sorry, you're gonna have to pay for your classroom supplies on your own, but hey, here's your Glock. And you want to see shit hit the fan real quick, is going to be tied to the inexperienced teachers that do choose to carry, that will likely experience, I would say multitudes, but we'll just say it'll only take one negligent discharge for that to hit the fan, and it'll open zero eyes to the problem. They're not fixing the problem; they're exacerbating the problem.
Right, and all it takes is one teacher walking out of the room for a second, maybe to talk to another student or talk to another teacher. A student gets nosy, they pull it from the drawer, and then what?
Exactly. Exactly. Oh my God, that's horrible.
Mr. Zeitgeist, I don't know if you want me to address the one about Project 2025 or not. I don't know if you want to talk about that here.
Go for it. It's something I have pinned 2 videos on. It's as far as I'm concerned, how do I not violate TikTok standards right now? As close as we want to get to a certain book that somebody with an upper lip beard penned, and we don't want to go there, because whatever is embedded in Project 2025, what is clearly spelled out, and even more dangerously, what's in between the lines, there is nothing good to come. So please, yes, of course, go ahead.
So like you said, it would basically be like a Fourth Reich, and that's what they are going for. And it does tie in specifically to Donald Trump's Agenda 47. If you read, they do coincide almost identically. Little thing that most people don't remember about Project 2025 is it was a secret originally. Then it got presented to Trump, and Trump's big mouth came out with an ad saying Trump 2025. And that's what got people invested in it and trying to figure out what it was. And then once Heritage Foundation made it a little bit more public. They switched it from Trump to a conservative promise, and they made it to any conservative. And a lot of people don't realize that it goes beyond him wanting to consolidate all power into the executive branch. It actually is written in their proposal that they also want to start penalizing unmarried families. So if you are, say, you have a child with someone and you're not married, or if a man and a woman are living together and they're not married or in a relationship, they want to encourage for actual criminal penalties. And it's another way to restore the, what's the word they use? The nuclear family, and push the marriage is sacred, and no more unmarried children, out of wedlock children. It's just another way to instill their Christofascism. And this is, like you said, it's straight up the agenda that Mustache Man used in the early 1940s Germany. And we don't want that here. We actively fought that as it was going on, and now it's starting to make a rise here, and we need to show that same energy here and fight it again.
How would that even
Which
be enforceable? I was just reading that out of something like 74 million children in this country, 11 million are in single parent households.
Right. And the thing is that with this agenda, it's only going to be relatively possible for them if they take both the presidency and Congress. If we can hold Congress, if we sadly lose the presidency, Congress cannot act. They will not act, because a lot of what that agenda and that project want violates the Constitution. They would have to change the Constitution. And that's also extremely hard as well. So I don't see the likelihood of all of it happening being very high. It's still the fact that that threat is there. And if we don't show out and vote and make our voice be known, then it gives them the pathway to do it.
But the concern that I have with regardless who is going to run the political show is how the courts are stacked, particularly the Supreme Court, where I think there are 4 or 5 upcoming cases that they're about to hear. None of them is in, I would say, any sense positive as far as progressive and forward thinking and actual human values are concerned. And as an adjacent, I just want to offer the consideration that I think the Supreme Court declared Alabama has to redraw its districting, and they're just blatantly ignoring the court order. At which point, with the power that is stacked in the courts, does it actually even matter what happens as far as political representation is concerned, because we cannot restack the courts fast enough?
And that's where it's a little tricky, because right now they are taking pretty much every case that comes their way to try and set a new precedent. And that's the number one thing they did it with was Roe v. Wade. But then they started going after Ferguson, and they started going after all these other laws that have been set precedent for us for our freedoms. And I know there is possibility of impeaching SCOTUS, and outside of that, I don't really see a way of stopping them. But if Project 2025 does start to get enacted, then it would make it worse, because whatever protections our Constitution currently allows us would no longer be there. So while it doesn't seem like it, we do still have some protection, and they want to take that away.
What's the way out?
That's the only mature and logical way of doing it outside of what the opposition is calling for, which no one wants.
I mean, one of the, I suppose, hinges that I have in many of my videos is that voting is the ultimate bastion, if you will, to still enact some form of pacifist intervention. If we miss the boat and essentially don't vote, then the pacifist intervention is out the door.
Right.
And at that point, the only way to intervene and restructure the system to a semblance of normalcy is going to come with just outrageous collateral damage.
Has already released reports that this election is going to be among the worst, and for the other agencies to prepare.
Okay, so
How do you think it was possible for Donald Trump to get this much stuff stirred up? Like, how do you think it's possible that we got on this path?
Trump had one advantage that nobody else in the political arena had, and that is preconditioning. He was a known quantity for decades. He is one of the very few who has had the opportunity to tell many of the admired celebrities who came on the show that they are fired, taking a power position. And with that preconditioning effect, with this sort of continuous presence over the course of time, his entire persona just was a household name. He didn't have an uphill battle. He was already there. He was known. He was a known quantity. And for many people who aspire to be more but find themselves disappointed with the status quo, realizing they will never be more because the system is stacked against them, and then having somebody in a power position that tells their idol that they're fired, that's a powerful combination. And as
Plus,
much as I can't stand him, as I just read Brooke, you're absolutely right. If there's one thing that Trump knows, it's how to get into the headlines. It's appalling. It makes me viscerally just sick, but that's a talent he's got, Dr. Sandstrom.
well, I was also going to add that you had a large number of white people in this country who were pissed off about having had a black president for 2 terms, and they wanted revenge. And Trump was the perfect one for that because he's known to be a racist since way back. He and his father both. So not only did he appeal to them on that level, but he also convinced them that um, you know, minorities, primarily immigrants and brown people, are coming for them and that they're better than them. I mean, who was it? Lyndon B. Johnson, who said, convince, I'm paraphrasing, but convince a poor white man that he's better than someone else, and he will let you pick his pockets, or he will willingly give over his bank account to you.
Mhm.
So I think that there were two things at play there. So yeah, Trump's already preconditioned the country, and then a lot of white people who wanted revenge.
And what's scary
And what I'm
on
trying to get into people's, hang on just a second. What I'm trying to get into people's brains is that a Morning Consult poll has Trump leading DeSantis by 43 percentage points. And other polls basically have him come up at 55.1%, DeSantis at 14.2, which is, it's basically indicative that it doesn't even matter what the outcome of any of the indictments is, or since plural, 91 of them. At 55%, at a 43% lead, depending on the poll, it doesn't even matter what happens to him. So,
and
question back to you, or actually, sorry, go next, Gen X.
well,
I just want to pose this question and throw it in there. Is that what if?
the what if is almost irrelevant because what you just said kind of illustrated what I was about to what I was going to chime in with. There's a master class being given to all of us right now. We're all witnessing this. And, I used the term last week, the proverbial frog in the boiling water, right? Well, we've gone way past that. We're at the point now where the Donald Trump America, um, they are creating a societal norm now where anything that doesn't align with their thought process and methodology, it's not just false, they're delegitimizing the system. They are delegitimizing voting. You know, when we talk about voting, everybody vote. I'm on that bandwagon. The only way we win is we all have to bring our power together and vote. But the problem with that is going to be with every Republican that wins a race or wins an election, they're they're going to support the platform that Donald Trump has started in delegitimizing the elections process for every Republican that doesn't win. So it's happening in front of our very eyes where facts no longer matter, truth no longer matters. What matters is what Donald Trump's America deems fit and certain, what Donald Trump's America means to them. That's what matters. And anything that doesn't fall in line with that is not legitimate. Facts be damned. Truth be damned. Science be damned. All of it be damned. It doesn't matter. He could sit there and lie to you to your face, and a Trumper will go, "Yeah, absolutely. That's right. That's how I'm going to vote." No matter what you present to them, that's what's happened to us, and that's where we are. So the power of the vote, and I think in 2024, um, we're going to see that come to fruition. We're going to see how many voters have been disenfranchised because of it, and it's gone way bigger than we've ever seen in our lifetimes. And I think 2024 is going to be the culmination of that. That's why I was half joking with Travis earlier, where it's refreshing to see a candidate speak in facts and logic, but it doesn't draw the clickbait like the candidate who gets up and screams, "You see, I told you that there were aliens and they brought COVID from Mars," and everybody will get on board because that's the legitimacy of the world we live in today. And I think that number one, we have to stop platforming Trump. Trump is not a legitimate candidate, and we have to stop platforming him. We have to stop letting him be in the headlines. We have to stop legitimizing his presence by making every fucking news story about this guy something that hits the headlines every day. We have to start platforming the candidates that matter. We have to start platforming the candidates that will affect change and bring good change. We can't do this anymore. And this kind of goes to the whole TikTok conversation as well, right? When we're platforming MAGAs to come up into spaces who bring zero facts, zero evidence, zero logic, and it turns into these 3 hour long, lives, like, and no hate on like Harry Sisson, for example. I love his TikToks, but his lives, when he brings up these maggots into them and they turn into these shit show conversations that have no legitimacy, but for getting likes, he's exposing them to people. And if one MAGA is arguing with a Democrat in a live where two Democrats in the audience can listen to him and go, "Oh, wait a second, that guy made sense." Well, if he could change two minds, those two minds can change other minds. We have to stop platforming these people and letting their stupid rhetoric get out and be heard by logical, reasonable people who no longer choose to vote because of all of the non-logical stances that they take, all of the bullshit that they spew. That's the problem that I see, and that's the America that Donald Trump has tried to create, and that's the America that Project 2025 is going to perpetuate if we allow it to.
And I think in that vein, we have to stop, media, regardless of whether it's left leaning, right leaning, or other, is going to go, they're going to platform whatever makes them the most money, whatever gets them the most views. And so, to go back to the kind of the Black Wall Street idea, we have to stop giving the media our views when they're platforming Trump. Change the channel, go to BBC, go to NPR, go to something else, go watch Netflix, but there's no reason for us to give them our views when that's what they're doing, exactly the way they did in 2016, exactly the way they did it.
So really quick interruption. Britt is in the house.
Evening all.
I assume you saw your mom off to wherever she's going.
She's not gone yet. She's gone bed early.
Oh, she's not gone yet.
She's not gone yet.
And Tom is back.
Hello.
That is brilliant. Tom, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. I don't have 1,000 followers, so I guess I can only audio.
Well, we can sort that out.
So that's the new rules now.
I guess so.
Well, there is an easy way around that. Start selling stuff, and they promote you quite quickly until being able to go live. But
make more clickbait videos.
Yeah, indeed. To catch Brit up, since I think, Tom, you've been here for a little while and basically listened to the conversation. Essentially, we are trying to figure out right now, for one, how is everybody feeling and where is everybody at? Because from the onset, I sort of felt that there is a shift in tonality lately in the community. It seems a little heavier and not necessarily resigned, but definitely more burdened with what is unfolding. And it seems that we are a little bit out of sorts and without the ability to truly make a measurable difference. Am I over interpreting this? Am I completely off my rocker? Feel free to just throw in your thoughts, of course, as to where you see the community going.
Do you want to go first?
Go for it.
Yes. In simple answer to that question, yeah, it's quite dark and depressing at the moment, everybody's attitude to where it's all going. And I think for me, the past few days, I've reached a point where I'm posting videos where I'm including cartoon characters. I am literally trying to mock the farcical situation we seem to be in at the minute. I'm trying personally to add whatever levity I can. I can't bring myself to do the serious stuff now because everybody else is, understandably, for all the right reasons. It is depressing. So personally, I'm just gonna. I did a video a couple of days ago where I basically said I'm adopting the George Carlin school of thought now. I'm just going to sit on the sidelines with a glass of scotch and just laugh at the insanity of it all. I mean, I'm still positive that enough of Western civilization, not just America, has recognized what's going on, and there is a genuine turning point to all this, 2024, 25, 26. I think climate change is going to be the compounding factor to all this, and we are going to turn a corner. I mean, for me, the big one has been the reaction to, philanthropic billionaires. So many people have just said, no, sorry, we're done. There is too much discrepancy now between you and the rest of society. Go away, we don't want to hear it. That we all remember the Gilded Age of the 1800s and early 1900s, and that came to an abrupt halt. I think society's there again. People, the strikes, the auto workers, there is a bit of a groundswell, I hope, against all of this, and long may it continue. And that's just me being optimistic.
Well, then let me squelch that optimism a little bit. Quinnipiac poll, 47% Trump, 46% Biden, and every once in a while that's flip-flops. So in other words, they are by 1 percentage point separated. If that's not cause for concern, then I don't know what is.
Oh, I'm not discounting the polls, Prof, but I'm holding on to the fact that I genuinely believe, whether it's CNN, CNBC, MSNBC, their dollar reward is from continuing a perception of an on-the-edge fight. I look at the recent elections and smaller district elections where Democrats win again and again and again and again. I think the groundswell of opinion is something's got to change and pretty radically. And that doesn't play well into any media company's narrative. They want you to believe that American civilization is right on the edge of fascism. And don't get me wrong, there are tens of millions of people who want fascist authoritarianism. I just think there's enough people now who know that's a very, very feasible future for the country that they are galvanized to stop it. That I can only hold on to that because otherwise I'm not sleeping at night.
Forget about Gen Z because they're coming
Exactly.
up. They're coming up and they're coming out.
I'm holding on to the optimism purely to help me to sleep.
Tom,
And if Gen Z wasn't a problem,
optimist or pessimist? Hold on a second, Janet. Tom, where are you at on this?
I have been studying identification in great depth the past 3 months, and I think what's happened is that all of the Trump supporters have over-identified with Trump to the point where when you slam Trump, you're slamming them, and they can't differentiate between themselves and Trump anymore. So I think there's actually that kind of a blindness, and my hope is Gen Z is going to make a difference in terms of the voting. But right now there's so much depression and anxiety and despair. I think that we have got to help people move through that. But my concern is the over identification of that 46% of Americans have with Trump, and I agree with Dr. Sandstorm that it was racism that was part of the problem of why they picked up on Trump. I know many of my relatives hated having a black president, and he's a great marketer. There was just a perfect storm of events, I think, for Trump to come forward. So
yeah, let's be very, very honest about it. I love this country, but it has, because I believe subsequent to the Civil War, the Confederacy was handled with kid gloves, and they were allowed to put up statues, and the Daughters of the Confederacy were allowed to carry on, and the Jim Crow era. This country has never really shook off a significant racism problem, and I think that for many decades these people kept quiet, and Donald Trump just allowed them to just come out into the daylight and be themselves and feel like they were the patriots, and it's given them a certain level of platforming. But whether he ends up in an orange jumpsuit in time, or whether he just can't do all the rallies, or the Republican Party try to deplatform him through some primary shenanigans, I do think those tens of millions that identify directly with him, and I totally agree with you on that, I don't think they're going to be enough to stop a groundswell of, no, America's not doing this.
Well, right, mentioning the orange jumpsuit thing, that actually brings up a whole nother concern because, yes, while the election is a major concern of potential outbreak and violence, we have to look too, and he does have members in his base actively saying if he is convicted or they try to send him to jail, that they will break him out and they will start to rebel then. So we kind of have two separate situations we have to be on the lookout for.
The one thing I would go to on that is they've drawn so many lines in the sand of, if Donald Trump doesn't win the election, we're going to rebel. There'll be a civil war. If Donald Trump doesn't, if we don't succeed on January 6th, there'll be a civil war. They've drawn so many lines in the sand. Yeah, if he ends up in an orange jumpsuit or convicted, do I think there will be small incidents of domestic terrorism? Yes. Do I think there will be bloodshed? Unfortunately, yes. Do I think it will be sort of enough to counter the military establishment of the US and the police, even though there's a far right base to that? No, I don't. I genuinely don't. And I would love to see Biden and the administration grow a pair, that the minute there is significant loss of life at the hands of MAGA, they are declared, every single one of them, MAGA is declared a domestic terrorist organization, along with the Proud Boys and everything else. Anything tied to Trumpism at that point should be declared domestic terrorism. No
Well,
matter how much the Republicans try to use it as a, a censorship narrative.
I don't believe we yet have an actual legal classification of domestic terrorist. There, the term is thrown around, but I don't believe there's an actual legal classification for that at this point in time.
The domestic terrorists already. The minute you have somebody mowing somebody down in a rally in a car, that was enough for me. But you're right. At what point? They tried to overthrow the government. They tried to there was a coup. At what point are they terrorists?
I'm not arguing with that by definition they are, but there's not a legal classification, which means that they are not punished the same as foreign terrorists that come on the soil and do these kind of things. And there's been a huge resistance in our government and our Congress to forming that classification by law.
Yeah, no, absolute valid point.
Well, I think there is at least a socially understood definition of what makes a domestic terrorist. And given that some of the verdicts coming out of the J6 trials, I think supports the idea that they're actually throwing the book pretty significantly at some of those offenders. It just doesn't seem to be enough. It doesn't seem to be a deterrent. And I recorded on this a couple of weeks ago, where I may have to stand corrected actually, that I thought that this would be enough of a deterrent to introduce some personal accountability, that if you go that far above and beyond your identification, that there will be repercussions. There are consequences to your actions. And it doesn't seem to sink in. And I want to just go up to Travis here for a second with this, because obviously you are in a deeply red state. Does it sink in, or is this something that people just brush off and perhaps just ignore?
That's the very end of that. Is it what?
Is it the consequences of J6 with the convictions and 10, 15, 20 years worth of jail and prison time? Is this something that sinks in with the mostly red voting population in Indiana, or are they dismissing this? Is this a non-factor for them? What is the mood up there in regards to those convictions?
So I feel like that would depend roughly where in the state you are. So, like someone had mentioned Evansville, for example. I'm partnered up with someone running out of that district for House of Representatives. That's District 8. Evansville is a historical sundown town, along with many towns around there. So areas like that, I feel like it emboldens them and makes them actually want to band together to do another one. Whereas up in the northern area or in Indianapolis, it's more purple and bluish, and they consider J6 as a stain in American history. So it roughly depends on where you are, but it also speaks to the fact that with how down the middle this state is, it could also break out. But my whole fear right now with not just Trump, but any conservative getting into office is violence. That is my number one concern more than anything, because of such high probabilities across the nation.
Gen X, I cut you off earlier. I'll jump back in.
Oh yeah, that was like 10 miles and 30 days ago that you cut me off.
I know, but I figured you remember.
No, I'll remember.
I would like to pose a question to everybody off what Travis has just said about Republicans getting into office and potential violence, which I don't discount, but I'm hoping it's small enough in scale to just be regarded as domestic terrorism, which is that in itself is a terrifying prospect that I'm even thinking there. The one thing that I fear is both parties, and I am talking about the Republicans now prior to their fascist era, have always used their difference of policy opinions as weapons against each other to garner votes. It's what politics essentially is. Or does anybody else fear that the Democratic Party right now, as the administration, could be doing more in recognition of fascism growing like a rampant weed right now across America, but are tempering their reaction to it? One, because of a perception of public opinion of potential censorship and left authoritarianism, which it wouldn't be, and leaving it alone to drive voter reaction. You know, are they playing with fire by not dealing with it in order to potentially go on a vote in 2024?
As a whole, 100% agree. The Democratic Party could be doing a lot more. And starting with back in the day, decorum was fine. Back in the day, decorum was needed to engage in conversation. But the Republican Party, and specifically the MAGA party of the Republican Party, has thrown decorum completely out the window. And the problem is that'd be fine, but Democrats are still trying to play by it, and they don't realize that the rules have changed. You have a couple of Democrats that are stepping their game up, like Eric Swalwell, for example, and his interaction with McCarthy in the Congress halls, bathroom halls. Like stuff like that, that starts to tell the Republican Party that you're not playing anymore, and this stuff is getting too far. Like you need to stop the shit and get back to the tables of negotiating. That works, but we need more of them, more Democrats involved in that. Too many of them, and I feel like it's because their corporate donors don't want them really to fight against it, but they need to, because whether your corporate donors want it or not, your constituents don't, and any logical politician is going to listen to their constituents on that matter over their corporate donors.
And John
I agree
Fetterman
with
is
you
another good
100%.
example of that as well, right? But that's exactly the problem, Travis. You know, we're still stuck in the mindset of when they go low, we go high, right? And I don't want to say we need to react with the same type of energy, but simply simply the apathy of it is a severe demonstration of what I'm talking about. The fact that it's not being addressed, the fact that people aren't saying anything, the fact that not a single Democrat that I have, at least to this date that I have seen, has even uttered the words Project 2025 yet addressed it in any meaningful way. So it starts with Biden and it goes all the way down the ticket. We have to, and we've talked about this almost week after week. This is the messaging thing, right? We're allowing all of this to show on the right, and yet we're not responding to it in any meaningful way. I mean, as constituents we are, but as representation, we're not. And the fact that you see Nazi flags, I'm sorry, I know you're not supposed to say that word. The fact that you're seeing this in real time and the deflection game is so strong within the Republican Party that we're not even addressing it, and yet they're still using it against us, right? They're using an argument against the left that we're not even defending, and they're continuing to do it. That's the messaging, and that's the problem, and that's in my opinion, it's complete and utter apathy, because there's no other way to describe it. Unless they respond, it's apathy, and that's a problem, or that's almost the problem.
And
Yeah, the metaphor I used with a colleague at work the other day is basically the Democrats right now are bringing Senate floor legislative debate to a knife fight. That is literally what's happening at the minute, and they've got to get with the program. This former Republican Party is now a fascist party, and if they get in any way, shape, or form, I genuinely believe for the first time in my life, it would bring about the end of elections in the US. They would find some way of, putting in emergency powers or whatever, very much like we've been before in Europe. They would bring an end to popular representation. And the Democrats need to get with the program, because if they don't address it, there won't be an office again, ever.
So a perfect example of what I mean by Democrats needing to step it up. All right. So when the Democrats had the slight majority, it wasn't super, but they had a slight majority. They could have at any time ended the legislative filibuster, which would have required 60 Senate votes instead of the 50. They could have at any time ended that, which the Republicans did nonstop when they were in office, and they could have got a lot more done. They chose not to do it, and the only thing that I can think of is because they're corporate donors, because everything that did get passed, surprise, surprise, benefited their donors and not us.
Yep, totally agree, Travis.
When you walk up and down the street and you talk to everyday people who are not on TikTok, they are not aware of what's going on in the world. They really don't care about what's going on. I don't think there's going to be violence. I think it's going to be like 2016 when we woke up in the morning and Trump was president. That's my biggest fear, that he's going to win again, and it's going to be because people are tired of it. I can't believe the number of people that don't read the newspaper, that don't listen to the radio, that are sick of everything, and they just don't care. And the Democrats are not fighting back. I have friends in Wisconsin, Missouri, all different places who are saying that they are trying to get things going with Democrats, the Democratic Party and all, and they aren't doing anything. They just aren't. And that's...
Well, and therein lies my concern, in a sense that there is zero possibility that they are not aware of Project 2025 and various other projects that fall in the same path. And by the time they are going to react to it, or perhaps spell things out, or really bang the drum as to what's around the corner if we vote in the erroneous direction, it may just be too late. And to hook up to what Britt just said earlier, I'm just looking at who was just invited to the CPAC. It was Orban. Orban has turned Hungary from a pretty flourishing, well-situated country into a bastion of contemporary fascism. Freedom of press, gone. Freedom of the people, mostly gone, with a basic trajectory to getting worse. And Giorgia Meloni was just here. I mean, just look at who you associate with, which gives you a pretty good indication as to where we're headed with this particular party. And I want to address Nick in the comment section here real quick. For one, I appreciate that you're showing up, because we've had 300 some comments in that Project 2025 thread. And I want to just put this out here real quick as far as my disposition is concerned, and this is certainly up for discussion if you so choose. But there is a threat assessment. It is one of imminence and one of basically threats that are later down the road. And the imminent threat is the Republican Party. If this goes sideways and they are getting closer to or fully functional Project 2025, we are doomed. And just like Britt said earlier, there is a good possibility that this may be our last election. This sounds perhaps a little fatalistic and very negative, but when you look at the function of Project 2025, concepted originally in 1979, that's a lot of years to prepare for something that at some point, if they see it through, will be our demise. So in that threat assessment, in that hierarchy, what matters is to address the imminent threat first. And that is the Republican Party. So people like Travis and various others who are there to eventually change the course of our actions and nation altogether from a grassroots perspective are absolutely needed. And once we have everything in place and we are controlling this in a humanitarian and positive manner, we need to work on the Democratic Party, because not all things are okay there either. So that was mostly funny.
Oh, they're still funded by donors. You know, both parties are unfortunately funded by corporations and are not actually genuinely representative of the people. You know, one of them sits on either side of the aisle. One's walking away from the aisle straight to evangelical fascism. But yeah, they're both sponsored by corporations. And that, you know, I've often joked with you, Prof, that, you know, if I had the Oval Office for a day, there's one thing I would want past: the end of Citizens United. Everything else stems from that. Get money off the goddamn table and make these civil servants represent a population again. That is the first thing that's got to happen. Lobbying money has got to come off the table. But you're right. It's tactic number one is you've got to make sure a Republican doesn't get in the Oval Office in 2024, because this project 2025, I wasn't aware of that until 2 or 3 months ago when I read through it. Well, actually, I listened to it. A PDF was read to me, and never ever listen to something that dark on your phone whilst in bed going to sleep, because you will have genuinely terrifying nightmares. I had Gilead level nightmares that night, and then realized in the morning, shit, I went to sleep listening to that Project 2025 nonsense. Don't do that. It's not good for you.
Did you guys go to the website and notice that there is an apply now button at the top? Yeah, it's been there. So if you go to Project
At the Heritage
2025,
Foundation?
project2025.org or .com, the actual website, it says apply now at the top right. And this is part of their vetting and training process. It'll take you to a secondary page, and that secondary page will ask you a series of completely asinine and ridiculous questions. And that is part of them vetting to see if you are conservative enough for them. Mr. Zeitgeist, if you're looking it up, I want you to pay attention to how these questions are worded and what they are asking.
I got it actually up right now, and the first thing that came to mind, and I'm just going to completely torpedo my YouTube upload here, you've got to be shitting me. That is, the TV behind me is not yet hooked up, but for future reference, I hope that I can bring this in place so we can actually look at things together while we're doing lives. This is next level. So it's project2025.org, and I mean,
well, that's me, content source.
If anything, you gotta give them. They're organized.
Scary about it is it's so organized and it seems so official that a lot of these ultra conservatives that they're trying to appeal to are going to apply, and that is where they are going to start assembling their army to accomplish their agenda. It even says it in their About Project 2025 on the page.
And if you remember,
So
when the
much about going to
the
sleep tonight.
when the video from the Heritage Foundation was released, I think it was almost a year ago, when they had that video from that last meeting in South Carolina. It got largely ignored by everyone. It got ignored by people on the left as, oh, this is just something stupid and silly and funny to laugh at. And it got, I don't want to say it got largely ignored by the right, but we had warning. We had warning. And as part of all the noise, it got to a point now where, and there was another creator that I watched a great video today. I'll have to go through my history and send it to you for Zeitgeist. But that apply now, they have been inundated, inundated. And I'm talking not thousands, but thousands upon thousands of people are filtering through that site. And if it doesn't terrify people, it should, because that is a lot of traffic to be funneling through that website that is still being ignored on the left hand side of this aisle.
I think I know what I'm going to be doing tomorrow afternoon.
What's that?
I'm going to be having a play with that website.
We do.
I mean,
people infiltrating it.
Yeah, no,
Well,
they
I've
need
got a
a
couple
serious
of
DDoS
MAGA
attack.
accounts that are good for traffic, good for content harvesting. I'd like to do a deeper dive on that and see how far you can go down the rabbit hole before you get caught.
I mean, it goes as far as that you upload your CV, your resume to the page.
Well, I can get ChatGPT to build me a fascist resume. That's easy.
Though you got to include preacher time and clergy service and all that. So they're like, oh, he's one of us.
I can fake that shit very easily.
Oh my God.
So why do
Travis,
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I just wanted to pass something past Travis real quick. Are you connected with other candidates who are following your philosophies, who are in the same vein of what you're trying to accomplish? Because if you are and they have enough followers on TikTok, I think it would be really useful to put a live together, a panel together with you and everybody else who you are connected with, just to amplify the message.
So I do know through my campaigning on TikTok, I've started interacting with candidates from Kansas, from Missouri, from Southern Indiana for House, a couple of presidential candidates.
Yeah, let's. I'll DM you. Let's see if we can get something together. And over to Dr. Sandstrom. Sorry that I rudely interrupted you.
No, I was the one interrupting. So no, I have a question, and I have an opinion on it, but I want to know what everyone else's opinion on it is, and that would be, um, why do we think that they are so good at this organization and getting people to sign up, like, the organizing of January 6th, the organizing of the Oath Keepers, and the Proud Boys and all of that kind of stuff. Why do we think they are so good at the organization and getting people to sign up for the cause? And I can tell you my opinion is, and I just think that from I'm going to let somebody else answer.
So I think that they're so good at it because realistically, and it's painful to say this, the right has always been good at getting their message across clearly and directly to who they want to get it to. Whereas Democrats, I just did a candidate training out here in Goshen, I want to say 2 months ago. And they were basically telling me, and I had to push back on them a little bit, that when you're canvassing, they brought up the map grid and said where you want to go and all that, and that's not a problem. But then they started talking about when you get to, like, say, retirement centers or like apartment complexes that are gated, basically saying just leave them, move on to the next one. And I had to tell them, I was like, well, can't you like get in touch with property management, get permission? I was like, we as Democrats are supposed to be about everybody having a voice, especially the marginalized, including the elderly. How are we just gonna say basically fuck them, we don't want to talk to them just because there's a door in the way? No, like, you need to put the work in and talk to these people. The Democrats seem to, in the political campaign field, I should say, because the voters are different, entirely different group of Democrats than I've come across in the political world. And in the political world, again, it's all about decorum and going after what you know is going to be a win. And it's like, well, you don't know unless you actually try. So you're passing up a bunch of people that could potentially help you flip that seat.
Well, I have a theory as well, but it's more from the psychological point of view because I'm a psychiatrist. The conservative right are people who are much more likely to fall in line and take orders from someone that they believe is an authority figure. Whereas the left, the liberal mind and psychology, is more likely to look around for the nuances and the differences in what's going on and to try to see the big picture and to try to connect all the dots in an intuitive sort of way and take into account people's feelings. And the right isn't about that, although they get their feelings hurt pretty easily. They're not about trying to save other people's feelings and bring everybody, kind of into a state of harmony. They're about, we're going to fall in line, and it's our way or the highway, and that's the way it is. So I think from a psychological point of view, they have an advantage in that way, unfortunately.
Well,
Yeah, to
Sandstorm, it's
build on
also
what you just said, Sandstorm, it is a whole lot easier to homogenize the opinions on the right into a single collective than it is the myriad of different personal and social agendas of all the different demographics on the left. You can basically bunch people on the right together, and they do themselves a lot more easily, and that makes it a damn sight easier to market to and control.
Now you could break it down to the fact that they are a singularity, where we're representative of true diversity, and in that diversity lies all different issues and facets of importance, right?
Yeah,
So how do you collaborate that? How do you bring that all together when a party that is literally run by everybody they aspire to be, right? They're run by old rich white guys, and what does every Republican want to be? An old rich white guy, right?
yeah,
So they all have that same mentality, and it's far easier to direct the minds of that singular objective than it is to bring that messaging together that make up the Democratic Party, right? We are the party of diversity, but in that diversity is our challenge, right?
yeah.
How do we bring all of our messaging to a singularity? How do we find the one thing that is important to every marginalized group that makes up this party in order to consolidate, what it's so much more difficult for us. And that's not a bad thing, but in relation to messaging and control, it kind of is, right? Because for the Republican Party, they can find the one thing that triggers every single Republican and run on that one thing, where we have to do it in multitudes of directions and try to organize that. That's the issue that we face.
On the psychological aspect, like she was talking about, I don't know who's seen it, and I know it's not conclusive, but it does give an idea. Have y'all seen the study? I believe it was the National Health Institute that showed the difference between a typical conservative brain and a what would be viewed as liberal brain. And it did show in that study, it's small scale, but it showed that the conservative brain does operate more on fear and disgust. And it makes sense because when you turn on things like Fox News or OAN or Newsmax, they're talking about how scary Joe Biden is and how dirty Democratic cities are. Those are the two main messaging. And then with the typically seen as liberal brain or progressive brain, they operate on sympathy and empathy for others, which is why when you turn on things like MSNBC or all that, they're talking about the homeless crisis. They're talking about the addiction crisis. They're talking about education, and they're trying to build people's lives up. And I don't really know how you can combat someone whose brain operates on fear and disgust to join you on the side of logic.
I
Can I just
think we're
throw
getting
this
too,
over right to Dr. Samstorm because she talked about this last live?
yeah. I think we're getting too fancy. I really think it's a cult. I just think it's a cult of personality.
Well, it is a cult of personality, but who falls into cults? People
Well,
who are fear People who are fear driven, who need somebody to save them, who need to feel safe and a part of a group. And that those people by and large are people who have these brain differences that Travis was discussing, that we've discussed on here before, which is actual brain differences, enlarged amygdalas in the conservative population, which is, going to drive them toward more fear and anger and aggression, and under functioning anterior cingulate gyruses that are going to enhance, understanding nuance and filtering in the sensory stimuli that's coming in from the environment to tell what's dangerous and what isn't. So when you don't have that, but you have an enlarged amygdala, you are fear driven and you will tend to join cults.
Yeah. Well, I'm a Wisconsin boy who went to Mississippi State to get my doctorate, and I was called Blue Belly, and they hated me because I was from the North. So instead of calling them whatever you call Southern people, I made friends with them, and everything changed. I think we're mistaken by calling Republicans all of the names that we call them and by making fun of them and everything else. Because there are 6 responses to low on Maslow: fight, flight, posture, submit, attend, and befriend. And I think that we have got to attend and befriend and stop all of the name calling our fellow Americans dumb shits and blue motherfuckers and all this other stuff that we do, rednecks and everything. I think we have got to, person by person, meet them as people and hear them out and then talk with them. because that's going to make a difference. Not this entire us and them thing. We're going to have another civil war if we do that.
Professor Heath, I mean,
Joe, before I duck out, I've got to leave one final thought with this. I totally agree with you, and not. So, anybody on the right of the aisle that's prepared to have a civil discourse about policy, and defense spending versus social spending, old-fashioned politics between conservatives and liberals, I'll talk to them people all day long. Fascists who want to hang the gay community and burn Jews and burn books, sorry, there is no social discourse or return. And I will mock them and vilify them till I don't have a pulse anymore. I agree with your sentiment, but there is a certain level that, nope, sorry, I am not talking to you anymore. I am mocking you or blocking you. There's got to be a line in the sand. You can't. I've got friends that I know in this country now that I no longer really have anything to do with, because they've said some of the craziest shit I've ever heard. Like, Obama was the head of a Muslim terrorist organization. Okay, well, you're not in the same plane of reality as me now, are you? I've got to walk away from those people. There's got to be a line in the sand because some people can't be recovered.
But see,
I agree with the sentiment,
But see, Britt, there's this African American man, unfortunately, whose name I'm forgetting. I used to work with him, but he met with all of the Ku Klux Klan leaders, and he got them, including the Grand Wizard, to leave the Ku Klux Klan because most of these people are just ignorant cowards. And he talked with them, and it wasn't about policy and stuff. He talked with them as human beings, and they began to realize, wait, we're all humans here in the United States. He got to the human level, and that is what's important. We have forgotten how to be human beings, I think.
yes and no. Again, that thing. What you're doing is you're pointing out that if you can actually get a pretty staunch Trumper sat down and have a conversation with them about, where your tax is going to go in the next 5 years and who's actually responsible for that, you can potentially get to a point where you start agreeing with each other. But then they'll leave that conversation and spend the next 2 months sat in front of Fox News again and be galvanized again in their fascism. You're dealing with a relentless machine of generating fascism, and unless you can literally switch them off from their programming and actively deprogramming them, some of them are lost causes at this point. And I'm not trying. I'm meant to be the optimist, and now all of a sudden I'm being the pessimist.
You're
I
gonna
don't
sleep
think
well tonight.
most Trumpers know anything about the Republican Party or what they stand for. I think they just love Trump and hate Democrats. I don't think they could tell you one Trump policy.
So I feel like a
Correct.
lot of them, it's because so many of them are desperate for answers. And so many of them have seen that for so long, all of the politicians have been on the same yachts and the same private dinners, shaking hands and laughing with each other while we kept suffering. And Donald Trump did stand out. He was different from the others. He talked more like us. He got mad like we did. He said what was on his mind. And that's what I feel really attracted his base and why they're still clinging on, because he hasn't changed, but our politicians have been flip-floppy on a lot of things. And people react to consistency and honesty. And he is honest about who he is.
Less syllables works with a certain audience. Absolutely.
I just want to throw in real quick. 2 to 3 people are waiting to come up. I see you. I'm not ignoring you. I just commonly don't go beyond 6 because otherwise it turns into a
Prof,
hellacious mess.
I will duck out and let you get some of your other
Hold on a second before you run away with your bourbon here, because I want to address something here real quick that you brought up. Are some of the people lost causes and we will likely not recover them? Absolutely. History has shown this to be fact. And some, unfortunately, we need to abandon and leave behind, which is very much against every single fiber of my being. At the same time, though, The only way that we have a fighting chance without collateral damage is through just positive discourse. And what we're dealing with, inevitably, is cult behavior from a groupthink kind of perspective, so recognition, identification. And unfortunately, at some point, this type of recognition and identification through constant messaging is turning into who their identity shapes into, or what their identity shapes into. And to decondition somebody from identity, and we talked about this last time, unfortunately you weren't present, just to rehash, to decondition somebody from an identity style behavior is a one-on-one affair. That is therapeutic. That is sitting down with actual work with a therapist most frequently. To expect that we have enough mass appeal to decondition an entire group of people from what has become their identity is wishful thinking at best.
Mm-hmm.
So therein lies sort of that that intersection as to where we need to make a decision as to who do we leave behind and who do we hope to capture and bring with us. Unfortunately, the other side thinks the exact same thing about us, and there is the standoff.
Hang on.
Well,
Here's where I kind of disagree with that, and to a point. So with all three of you, I agree and I disagree. I think that yes, the identity part is strong because, I think it was Britt that said it earlier. They were conditioned and told, right? They were conditioned and told what that identity is without the logical thought that goes behind it. Zeitgeist, you're absolutely right, because we have to deal with them until we can't. But we have to deal with them in a way that takes them outside of the conversation of identity and start bringing them to an individualistic perspective and actually make them think about their positions instead of asking them questions like, tell me a policy that Trump did that was a good policy for America. We have to rephrase that, and we have to take it out of the identity politics into an individualistic perspective and actually get the conversation in a way that they are thinking about it as their self. Instead of asking the question that way, ask the question a different way. Why is that important to you? That question makes them have to think about their processes and what they know and don't know. And they have to hear the stupid coming out of their mouth themselves. And they really do.
Yeah.
Janek, the thing that you're right on this about, and I love that approach, and I have tried it. I don't know if anybody saw it. Bernie Sanders did that Fox town hall. It was a few years ago. And he just a very pointed question to the Fox audience. Do you want healthcare? Do you want national healthcare? And they were all in favor of it. As soon as he said the only party that, is actually fighting for that is not your party, then the identity thing, as you point out, comes back into it. You talk to most Republicans, they want to be able to pay their rent, pay their mortgage, have health care without becoming bankrupt. They want the same as us. But too many of them have tied themselves to, I'm a Trumper, I bought the red hat, I'm a Trumper. And you're right, what you said earlier on. Once you start talking about, okay, what do you need as an American to have some prospect of the American dream? They then start to realize, well, actually, I don't know how my party gives me that. And you can get somewhere, but then as soon as that conversation's over, they go back to watching Fox News, and they're convinced that, the trans community are the problem. What?
And that goes back to what TJ was saying in Maslow's hierarchy. The sense of belonging is right. That's gonna outweigh anything else that you're gonna bring up with them.
Because we don't.
So before I go and let somebody else leave a nightmare thought with you.
Sure.
Let me leave a nightmare thought with you. To what the doc said about belonging. As society becomes more and more disconnected, we're all talking to our phones. There's less people being in, community situations in bars and meeting each other in social situations, and people working from home. Does that disconnection for unfortunately, young white men who feel like they're all incels become a weapon for the far right to use as come to us and we will give you some semblance of community. That's terrifying.
Yes, and that's how gangs form. That's how gangs form. Young men who have no sense of belonging, who feel lost and forgotten, and nobody is helping them, and they can come together under the leadership of a gang leader and feel like they are in sort of in under an umbrella of protection and they belong, and that gives them a sense of feeling powerful when they have no other way to feel powerful.
Okay,
And
Prof,
on
I'm going to
that
let
note,
you guys put
I'm
somebody
gonna
else in the
say
window.
bye.
I'll say bye too.
Brett,
So,
thanks for
everybody,
joining
I've
in.
followed everybody back. Thank you very much for
And
letting
by
me.
the way, Brett, bring your Sunday night lives back, please. Thank you.
I have already said to my wonderful wife that after my mum's gone home, I am going to bring Sunday nights back because I miss doing this.
Awesome.
And I've got to build up my coins to give to other people. I don't, these coin things, I don't do them. I literally just hand them out to other people. And I can't join lives and reward other people for good points if I've got nothing in the bank. Anyway, I will see you guys later.
Thank
Brett.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Nice
Bye.
Storm.
Take
Nice
care.
Storm.
Whew, that was fast-paced. Travis, one question that I had in mind that I wanted to ask you real quick is, have you had an opportunity to, quote-unquote, turn somebody who is ordinarily a Trump supporter or a GOP voter?
Definitely open minds, and I have reeled people a little bit more to the center, but I wouldn't say I've necessarily turned them. But I have definitely opened their mind up to paying a little bit closer attention because when I talk to people, and this is one of the major problems I see when people on the left try and talk to people on the right, is that while we're sitting there criticizing them and their whole party and expecting them to take every bit of it, if they try to point out a genuine concern about the Democrat Party and we act like they're all perfect and dandy, then that shuts down all discussion. They're going to get defensive. They're not even going to try and talk to you anymore. So when I talk to them, I listen to what they say. I acknowledge their critique of the party as well, and I point out where I disagree with things that my party has been doing. So it builds rapport and it builds that open dialogue. And then once they see that I am acknowledging faults in my party, they start to open their mind up and start to agree that, okay, maybe these things in my party aren't so great either. And that's how I found discussion and pulling people more to the center if you can't at least flip them.
That, yeah, I mean, it's an uphill battle, inevitably. Somebody just mentioned in the comment section whether we are paying attention to the chats. And Elizabeth, yes, as much as I can. So if you were so kind, if there are any questions, any concerns, anything you want to throw up to the board here, to the panel, if you will, just please put it in the chat section and I'll try to pick it up as fast as I can, provided that it fits in the context of where we are in the conversation.
And as
No
my
fucks.
name implies, real quick, I am incapable of paying attention to what's going on in the panel and chat at the same time because, yeah, it says it right there. But I'll try.
Yeah, it's super fast paced. And again, you guys are amazing. Thanks for being here. No fucks, you are new up to the panel. Welcome. What do you have on your mind?
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for having me up. No, I just recently came across your live here, and I follow some of these guys that are already on there, and I just saw some familiar names. Decided to come in and listen, and it was refreshing actually to hear aligned voices, but with minute bits and leanings. Um, I had to really make myself really calm to listen to the centered voice that says we should be trying to make space for the other side, be a little bit more understanding, and I can hear that from a logic process standpoint, even from a cumulative process standpoint, or from an individual standpoint. It's very hard, however, and I picked up on something Britt said before he left, is that there are what we're seeing now, on the surface at least, screaming in our face on a daily basis, are they truly the voice of the extreme part of that wing? Or are they actually more the center of that wing, right? I've got this feeling like the supporting cast around them are the exact people that wave their hands to say, "Oh, we don't support that. We don't support that." But they make room at the table for those voices
Oh, I'm going
because
live
that's
again.
how.
Hold on, babes.
Sorry. So I was just wondering if considering where we are in history right now with what's going on prosecution wise and legal wise with Trump as a candidate, but yet his support levels in that particular world, in that particular vertical, is extremely high still. Okay. And with the rise of the vitriol and rise of violence that seems to be kind of like behind this or embedded with this ideology, what are your just general thoughts on what the next couple of years is going to look like? I mean, just a general thought. I don't, I doubt if any of us can put in specifics, but I worry
It's
about this going out of hand.
it's going to be tough. Basically, my general perception. It's going to be a tough next few years.
Well, I think if we succeed, if you will, in 2023 on the local level and 2024 on the overall level, then we are going to have the same question and dangers to contend with in 2029, because since 1979, they have advanced that plan. They have revised it and rewritten it and contemporized it, if you will, to be applicable to essentially the request of the times. Right now it's 2024. If they fail, so to speak, they're going to come back in 2029. And this has been actually subject of one of my recordings in the last couple of days, is that this country desperately needs political diversity. But given our two-party system, and even though we have more parties on the books, they don't see the light of day. They get no media coverage. They are not represented. And the independents, I appreciate the overloads as far as numbers are concerned of the independents, but they're not going to change anything. If I ask anyone what is the agenda of an independent, you usually don't get any answers. So we have got to solve the problem that we are contending with, the imminent threat first, then work on the Democrats and bring diversity into the fold. Otherwise, we will never improve as a country. We'll always be stuck in this hamster wheel. Next, whoever wants to go.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime up. That was a great word to bring up, and not diversity necessarily. I mean, I'm of immigrant descent and originally born in Vietnam, arrived in the United States at age 8 without any English whatsoever. But I was really lucky. Both my parents came here on scholarships previously, right? They did their undergrad at places like University of California, San Francisco, and Berkeley, and then went on to do their masters before they traveled all over the world and then met each other in Vietnam years later, right? So I'm not talking about that type of diversity, but I'm hoping you're talking about diversity of experiences and processes from around the world that worked for people, that has worked in unifying differentiating groups and differentiating groups that started out with very different goals but found themselves up against each other. I feel one of the biggest disadvantage, one of the greatest advantage of the United States has been the strength of it and the story that it's capable of telling about itself around the world. But one of the biggest disadvantages to the United States is that it's surrounded on two sides by two big great oceans, and it is literally cut off from any daily influence of observable, factual happenings right next to them that they can go, oh, it works. It does work. They don't see that because we're still selling ourselves the same story, you know. And I hope we get over that. And thank you for the time. I appreciate it, guys.
No, thank you. Thank you for coming up. To answer your question real quick, I am talking about diversity in political representation. Various parties, various perspectives, various line items, if you will, under the hopefully unifying factor that all of those line items are geared towards improving the United States in a responsible, humane fashion, which elevates women back to hopefully or closer to being our equal. They never were anyway. We've never managed that. But now we've pushed women even further down the road. BIPOC, LGBTQ, I mean, you name it. Anyone else other than the white Christian man in this country is usually worse off. And I hope that at some point, this country will, as young as it is, get its faculties together and actually, and that's up to us, obviously, vote people in place that allow us the variety and the diversity politically so that everybody is represented. Because when you look at how the representation goes right now, we are doing a shit job.
Yeah, and I think we better get ahead of it because there's a couple of other things in front of all the political divide and all the ideology divide. There's a couple of other imminent things that are dead in front of us. I'm involved in the world of automation and technology, and the automation and technology aspect of moving people out of the production arena. Whatever you're seeing in the news, guys, it's moving 10 times faster behind the scenes. Okay. I mean, like it is moving 10 times. You can become an Excel expert right now. Just jump on Excel right now. And because Bing is now attached to it, you don't need to know anything about Excel. You can actually, by plain language, use the microphone in front of you in your laptop and just say a bunch of gibberish of thoughts out of your mind. It'll put the right formula together for you and you'll have it like that. That automation is now at the hands of end users. Imagine what's going on behind places like automotive production. You know, it's a funny thing. We all want to stand with the unions now because we understand that labor is actually the value in everything, right? Actual labor and delivery. That's where the value is. You know, the ultra rich live off of the labor delivery mechanism. But that's a very short window now. We should have tackled that like 50 years ago because now, while we're contesting each other, they're automating on the back end. You know, if you go back and there's a interview with Elon Musk, and they asked him, "What is the most efficient and profitable automotive business that you can think of?" And you know what his one-line answer was? A fully automated one.
So this actually crosses into a video I've done a couple of days ago regarding universal basic income. If you don't have any plans next week starting 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Mountain, and so forth, I would actually like to move next week's live more towards automation, artificial intelligence, universal basic income, and everything else that ties to that. That's given Sam Altman, for instance, the CEO of OpenAI, who is very outspoken towards UBI. I think that is well worth of having a dedicated live, particularly towards that subject, if that's okay with you, and invite you back to that. For no bucks.
Absolutely, I would love that. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
I'm gonna step down now so that more people can have an opportunity to speak. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, guys. I appreciate you listening.
Thank you. Liz, haven't seen and heard from you in forever. While I'm inviting Doc Hazard, who would be great to have up here in the box. How are you? What's on your mind? I haven't heard from you in a very long time. Works best when you unmute yourself.
Phone's being weird.
Really
there we go.
Bad signal, it seems.
Let me try going out and coming back up, okay?
Roger that.
Yep.
Meanwhile, Diesel Punk Industries rolled into the house. Doc Hazard, it's the first time, my friend. How are you?
Good. How are you?
main question that I want to ask is: do you have a coffee cup in your hand?
No, I don't.
Whew, what a letdown. What's on your mind, my friend?
Oh, no, I was just in seeing what you guys were talking about. But I was thinking about I know it happened a while ago, but the guy in Russia, the Wagner unit, Prigozhin, that was killed.
Yeah.
I can't help but draw historical parallels, but July 1st, 1934, when Ernst Röhm was killed in prison,
Yeah.
head of the SA, similar light of the long knives kind of thing. I was going to do a video on it, but since you're here, I just noticed a parallel.
do it anyway. I mean, as far as Prigozhin's departure is concerned, I'm quite surprised that Putin's army went that creative, because usually they just throw people out the window or poison them. So that's certainly a step up from what they usually do. Was it foreseeable? Yeah, you don't depose Putin without repercussions. I just don't know whether that's measurably going to affect anything what's going on over there right now. Frankly, I doubt it.
Do we know what's happened to the Wagner group?
Well, they were indoctrinated into swearing an oath, I think, to the Russian army or something of that degree, correct?
I think so.
Yeah. But the Wagner group has as opposition now the Mozart group. So it's a composer war at this point.
Can't wait till the Bach group and the Beethoven group weigh in.
Yeah.
Wait, is it pronounced? I've been pronouncing it Wagner because I assume it was the German pronunciation, not the English pronunciation.
Oh no, it is Wagner. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You're right on the money there, for sure. Yeah, no, I don't really know what's going on over there as far as the validity of reporting is concerned. The only thing that I know as a Central European guy is you do not want to let Russia get back to its previous strength and control of land mass, because if that were to happen, we have a global issue on our hands, and that is not one that's easily resolvable.
Especially the coupling with Christo-fascism, which they're also trying to do as well. That makes 100%. It even worse.
I mean, as far as I understand, and please, anyone who has better information, correct me on this, but as far as I understand, the U.S. contributions to the Ukraine are mostly as basically hardware contributions, not necessarily cash contributions. So the billions of dollars that we are quote unquote handing over there wouldn't do us any good anyway, because it's hardware. And unless we want to chew on something that otherwise has a bullet in it, it really doesn't make much sense.
True.
Okay, so I'm not off my rocker then. Why do you think? Okay, there's an audience question that I think we just want to address real quick. Why do you think the Republicans are so pro-Putin? I'll just throw this in for everybody. Who wants to go first? Travis, as the official.
So that's actually a really good question, and that is something that we on the left have been trying to figure out for a hot minute. Because growing up, it seems like, so when I was younger growing up, I didn't know a whole lot about the Russia situation other than I was told that they were communist and that they were bad and that they were our enemies. That's what I was always told about Russia growing up, and specifically by the Republican Party. So to see them now all supporting this invasion and supporting the man that we were always told was the enemy, I'm at a loss for words for it.
Okay, you just cut off mid-sentence. Start out while he's catching his breath. What are your thoughts? Why the Republicans are pro-Putin, and Doc dropped off.
I think that they see him. I just think they see him the same way they see Trump. They just see this this, powerful screaming little man that can, tell them what to do. And they just seem to be, they call us the sheeple, but they're actually the ones that they want someone to make all the decisions and just say this is the way it's going to be. They almost behave in a way that they want a dictator. And I think that's why they found Trump attractive. And I just think they draw parallels between the two of them. I mean, prior Republican presidents, if they supported Russia the way we do now, they certainly didn't make it known to the public. I mean, Reagan I mean, I was a kid when Reagan was in office, but I mean, it seemed like he used to kind of sort of pound his fist on the desk, like, they're going to listen to us. And that was back in was it Gorbachev? I'm not even saying that right. Gorbachev days.
Wall.
Right, exactly. We told Russia what they were going to do, but I don't know if there were things going on behind the scenes that we were unaware of. Sometimes I wonder if the Cold War was really all that cold, because how did we go from that to this? So I don't even. I'm kind of like Travis. I'm at a loss for words myself.
How many Republicans went over to Russia for a visit? That was, I think, pre-pandemic, but I think several Republicans, Rand Paul, were visiting Russia. Yeah, it was quite a delegation, as far as I remember.
Wasn't our lovely Wisconsin Ron Johnson one of them?
Yeah.
I believe it came out in some, when he was running again this last time, it was where was your senator during the pandemic? In Russia. So there were a lot, a dozen at least, I think.
So as far as I'm concerned,
they're looking to him like he's some model to imitate. I'm like, he's trying to start World War, II, according to Trump.
Thank you, Andy, for putting the names up. As far as I'm concerned, why I speculate that the Republicans are pro-Russia, pro-Putin mostly, is simply because Putin shows how control is established over a large scale population and large land mass, larger than the United States. So I think there is something that is appealing to the degree that we want to adopt and learn from, and essentially become sort of a master apprentice, perhaps ideological relationship that could lead potentially to that type of infatuation. But I'm purely speculating on this, so I could be completely.
Somebody in the comments just said it's about worshiping the strong man, or and kind of the same way that they all feel about Trump.
I was going to say that kind of makes a little bit of sense. So I believe that, first off, it's a fact that the support for Putin started with Trump. Trump was the first one to come out and start saying, like, Putin's not so bad, he's a smart guy and all that, and that started to draw them in. But I wonder if it's because Trump has instilled in his base's head that the best kind of government is, ironically, authoritarian and totalitarianism government, because that seems to be what they are pushing for.
But he doesn't call it that. So, so they turn around and try to say, oh, that's what the Democrats want. If I had $1 for every, MAGA person I said, say the Democrats are the fascists, I'd be rich.
Like 2025 would go past authoritarian to totalitarianism, wouldn't it? Because it would be specifically in one individual.
Right.
Yeah. And Liz is back. Yeah, let's see if we can hear you this time.
Yeah, hey, can you hear me better now?
Yes, it's great.
Okay, good. Sorry, I had a friend drop off 20 pounds of tomatoes that needed to be canned tonight, so I was bouncing around the kitchen. They're in the pressure cooker now. But yeah, kind of going back to that, going back to what the immediate conversation is, yeah, I do think a lot of it's that singularity, and I think a lot of it also, though, ties into the religious belief system, because a lot of people just want somebody to tell them what to do. It takes the thought out of it, whether they want to admit it or not. But there are a lot of people that very blindly follow religion. There are a lot of people that very blind, like they don't ask. And I think it all just kind of ties into that, kind of like somebody said earlier, where like with the current right that the extreme right that we have now, it is very much do this thing. Like it's solid, it's streamlined, it's not, well, these are the options, this is the thing and this is what appeases. It is a thing, it is direct, it is straight, it is good or it is bad. People don't have to think about it.
That
and
is actually a solid point there.
Yeah,
because
that's a lot of what I see is that it is just that direct. It is yes or it is no. And somebody's telling them how to think and feel about it. Is it yes or is it no? And then they were told what to do. And like I said, whether they acknowledge that or not, they were told what to do, and they're like, okay, cool.
Yeah. And by the way, we are down to about 9 minutes. If anyone who has the ability to come up into the boxes because you have satisfied TikTok standards of follower count and whatnot, just request. I usually don't go beyond 6 anymore because otherwise it turns into a mess. And we'll just make the last 9 minutes a quick audience round for sure. I want to make sure that you guys are at least having the opportunity to bring up your questions. So request or throw your questions.
I would actually, what I was trying to talk,
Go for it.
Sorry, no. What I was going to say earlier before I had, I had to go back out and come back in is going back to, somebody had asked, has anybody ever had any success talking to a Trumper in that? And for those of you that don't know me, because I do try to keep a pretty low-key profile online, I kind of stand in a very unique position. I actually grew up around outlaws. And if you don't know what outlaws are, I'm just going to say that they are the number one enemy of the Hells Angels. And we'll just leave it at that. And at a very, very young age, because we were also poor white trash, we lived in freaking government housing and stuff like that. And a lot of my friends were black and colored. And at a very young age, I realized the differences. And at this point in time, but growing up in both worlds, I got to see both sides. And I mean, now today, I'm actually a community outreach worker specifying in social determinants of health of people of color. But anyways, when I have an ability to kind of function in both worlds, and the biggest thing I can say is that it is removing it's talking without the trigger words. It is putting it on a personal level. It's I'm not even Democrat. I'm a friggin' leftist. So, trying to control myself and not say power to the proletariat, it's trying to put it on that level. Like, I grew up very union strong. My dad worked at BF Goodrich. So when, as unions have been demolished and that, trying to talk to people and be like, well, okay, cool. Who do you think does more work, you or the CEO? Oh, well, it's me 100 times. Okay, cool. So why do you make $30 an hour and the CEO makes $3,000 an hour? And trying to get it in that single to single relatable experience, but it also is very, very exhausting. And I'm afraid that where we're at anymore, it's not feasible.
Well,
so yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to pop up to say and put out there. It is what I have actually converted full on Trumpies. Just being able to know the language to speak, because fortunately, I did grow up in that racist single mindset. But
Well,
then
let me
being
just
able to know
back.
how to speak without the trigger words.
Let me backfill some data here real quick, since you mentioned
Yeah.
CEO and CEO salaries. The Alphabet CEO, 226 million. Michael Rapino, Live Nation Entertainment, 139 million. I mean, those guys are getting paid at a level that is, I would say, just socially unacceptable. And there is no way that the value of their work equals in a fair manner the value of their compensation. And again, this is, I think, something that we probably should shelve also for next time, more towards the universal basic income kind of discussion, because that's sort of where the entire financial perspective trends towards anyway. Let's make this a last call real quick for everybody in the chat. If you do have any questions, last minute things you want to just throw up to us, please do so. Otherwise, last words, parting words. Travis, let's start with you. Thank you so much again for joining us. And what do you want to leave us with? For one, please shamelessly self-promote yourself.
So I want to say thank you for having me. It was a wonderful time up here. I do want to give you something that you can look up for interesting discussion. I don't know if you saw Tim Gurdon. He's the founder and CEO of the Gurdon Group. It's an Australian company. He was at a realty summit. Did you see what he was saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's terrible, and it says exactly what these corporations are trying to do to us. For anyone in the comments that hasn't seen it, I recommend looking it up. Also, if anyone in the comments is from Indiana and would like to help me try and get on the ballot, you can DM me. If you can help me with signatures, it'd be greatly appreciated. Anything you can to get me on the ballot so that way I can actually be heard and be seen by the media and actually have a fighting chance, I'd greatly appreciate it.
Travis, I'll DM you. I have sort of a secondary thought that may or may not be helpful. We'll chat offline. Starchild.
Hi. So I know we said this was going to be about kind of how's everybody doing and how's everybody. It sort of went 1,000 different directions, so we never really got there.
That's how it
One
goes.
thing I think is on a lot of people's mind is the government really going to shut down over them wanting to impeach, Biden without cause? And Carmen Idaho was in here earlier and what she wanted to bring up, and I think it's an important point to put out there. You got anybody in your life who might be needing to apply for SNAP, food assistance, rental assistance, anything that is federally government funded, get it done before the 30th of September, because if they shut down, last time it was a 30-day shutdown, and that's scary for us. My husband's a federal employee, works for the VA, but he is under the I forget what they call it, but where he would have to work without pay. So, kind of thing, if they stop paying us. The last time it lasted 30 days, I was working there too. We never got to the point where they didn't pay us, but we were like one paycheck away kind of thing, where they would just say, well, you'll get paid eventually. So there's that. From what I know there's a lot of people concerned. I don't know how it's going to affect Social Security, that sort of thing, but I know I'm concerned, like all the SSI funding that funds my son's care. Is the person who employs all the people that takes care of him really going to be able to, keep their staff and float the bills? So if you've got people that need any kind of assistance, get that stuff applied for before the 30th of September, because I think these nut jobs are going to do it for a publicity stunt. But I think it's going to bite them. I really think I'm seeing this energizing of Gen Z voters. I think that's where the answer is. So,
Okay.
I wanted to put that out there for people.
Yeah. No, thank you. And as always, of course, thank you for taking the time to be here with us in the boxes and spending your time on the lives. Liz, parting words. We are down to 1 minute and give me about 30 seconds.
Parting words. Yeah, parting words from my fellow healthcare workers. I work for the #1 hospital and healthcare system in my state. And our CEO a couple years ago reported an average salary of $1,500 an hour. Our average RN makes maybe $35 an hour. We got a 1% raise this year across the board. His 1% raise is one nurse's entire salary. And we are also one of the worst hospitals in the country that are supposedly nonprofit for using our nonprofit dollars. Power to the people.
Yes. And I think the power to the people segue. Thank you, Liz, for being here.
Yeah.
The
You
power
lovely
to the
Brock.
people segue, I think, is perfect for next week. So for one,
Yep.
everybody in the chat section, thank you so much for spending your time with us. The mods, Rothgar, Morgan Muffle, and of course, Smiling Eyes. Thanks for keeping us alive during this live, because I think there were several words that could have probably booted us off the live. But other than that, my parting words are simply thanks for sharing your time with us here, because this is
Thank you, Prof.
designed to be this is designed to be a safe space, and I think we've pulled it off once again. Next week we'll talk more. Until then, thanks so much, guys, and well, I'll catch you in the comment section. Till then, bye.
It's all smiling eyes.
Later, Prof. Thank you.